Welcome to Listen to Your Skin by Moon and Skin, the podcast where science meets nature to celebrate the story of your skin. Your skin is a living canvas, ever evolving, deeply personal, and uniquely yours. Each week, we'll dive into the science of healthy skin, share empowering stories, and uncover transformative self-care rituals. We're here to help you embrace every phase of your journey with confidence and care.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Listen to Your Skin podcast by Moon and Skin. And I'm your host, Dr. Jen Haley. And today I'm joined by a good friend of mine, Julie Gibson Clark, a former structural engineer turned wellness advocate who proves that biohacking does not have to break the bank. As a single mom, she optimizes her health on less than $150 a month, using simple yet powerful habits like mindset work, movement, sauna therapy, and targeted supplements. Her results speak for themselves. DNA methylation testing shows she ages just 65 days for every 100 chronological days. And she held the number 2 spot on the Rejuvenation Olympics leaderboard for over a year. Julie's passion is making health and longevity accessible for everyone. And today, she's sharing her best strategies for staying strong, vibrant, and healthy, no matter what your budget. Julie, welcome to the show.
So nice to be here, Jen. Oh my gosh, this is going to be fun, huh? Yeah. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, everywhere. We talk so often about these things. And first, I'd really like you to discuss what biological age is compared to chronological age, because I don't think that people really understand that there's a difference between the time we've been on the planet versus how our cells are aging.
Right. I mean, the fastest way to understand that is like the twin studies of one who smokes and one who doesn't, right? I think we can see the aging, but what we can't see is what's happening on the inside. So we have our chronological age, mine is 56, but then we have different ways to measure our biological age. So we have, 12 different hallmarks of aging. So really, theoretically, I suppose you could have over 12 different ways to measure that. So there's just a multitude of things that we're measuring, or this, not me, I am not in that, but that they're measuring when we're looking at biological age. So different tests are measuring different things, and so every test can give you a different biological age in theory.
Okay, so basically what I hear you saying is that our genetics do not determine how quickly we age.
Correct. Yes. So let's talk about one of the age tests, DNA methylation, right? So we're looking at the scientists, because I am not, this is way above my pay grade, so I'm only going to explain it the way I, as a little engineer, can understand it. But, we've got our DNA methylation, or these basically these guards that almost stand sentry over your DNA, and they're sort of saying, okay, this genetic trait is going to stay turned off, and this, good genetic trait is going to stay turned on. So imagine a baby who's got the ApoE4 gene. Well, they're not going to develop Alzheimer's as a baby because their DNA methylation is working to keep that DNA in a very, functioning in a very healthy way. So we can manipulate that DNA methylation as we age. And so what happens as you get older, that DNA methylation based on how you live your life. So how you play the piano almost, right? I suppose your genetics is the piano you've been given, but how you decide to play that piano, how fast you play that song, how hard you play that song, or how softly, that's going to determine how that DNA methylation ages. I mean, that's just one biomarker. Of course, there's, a bunch of different ways to measure your biological age. I mean, there's physical ways, right? There's your grip strength. There's just so many different ways that we age. And there's no one, like I said, there's no one hallmark of aging, although they all are linked together, right? So, I mean, if your DNA methylation starts getting wonky, well, then other things are going to get wonky, and your organ ages, different organs are going to age. I mean, it all ties together, but yet we can, because we're, humans, we have to kind of look at it systematically and in different ways.
Yeah. So,
different
okay.
systems. Yeah.
So to translate that, basically, when I was in medical school, we were taught
you'll know more than me.
Yeah, but you actually practice it. You practice it, and you've made a difference by over 20 years. So you just mentioned you were 56 years old.
Yeah.
And your tested biological age has been, what, 36?
36
years old, right? So I want to get into that further, but I want to just break it down for everyone listening that we have this like ageism. I call it ageism because people want to put people in certain categories depending on our chronological age. But what really happens is our biological age is more of a determinant to our health span, and that we do have control over it. As you mentioned in the twin studies, one twin will age, an identical twin will age at a very different rate than another identical twin. So even though they've been on the earth the same amount of time, they're aging at a very different pace. And I think this is the coolest thing in the world because that's what gives us agency over our life. Like we don't have to just give up and surrender to time. We have control through little choices that we make. And it doesn't have to be the billionaires that have this. It's tangible for everyone. So I know you mentioned DNA methylation. Can you, before we talk about some of the physical things, can you talk about some of the hallmarks of aging and what is a hallmark of aging and then how people can test for biological age?
Yeah, I'm going to try.
do your best, yeah. I know. And then you tell us how to hack it. That's really what we really want to get to here.
I mean, I can tell you how to hack the DNA methylation, which then hacks like all the other things, right? I mean, so there's the other big biological marker is your telomeres. So your telomere length. I mean, I know one of the great hacks for telomere length is meditation. You know, that's the free. I mean, of course, I think there's some supplementation and some other things that you're probably more familiar with. But I know that meditation, particularly TM, they've studied and it's done very well with.
What's telomeres?
So telomeres are you're the doctor. I'm the engineer.
Okay, I'll tell you how
this is the way. I just know I hear the whole shoelace story. So they're like the ends of the caps on the end of the shoelaces, and as those get thinner, everything kind of starts unraveling. Right?
Yeah. So every time our DNA is this cool double helix, and I mean, I didn't really learn this in medical school. This is just afterwards, right? But our DNA is a double helix, and every time it replicates, so while we're sitting here alive, all of our cells are replicating, some at faster rates than others. That double helix, the two strands of like your shoelace have to unwind. And in order to unwind, the little end caps of like, what's that called on the end of the shoelace? That little cap.
Just an end cap?
Yeah, it has to come off and for it to unwind. And every time it does, that end cap gets shorter and shorter and shorter. So what happens is the longer we're alive, those end caps have a higher chance of like completely decomposing, and then you have frayed shoelaces and the cell dies. And the more cells that die, the more we decompose, right? So we want to keep those telomeres long. Yeah. So you're basically saying one thing that you can do to do that is meditation. That's free. That's available.
It's totally free. And it's, just keeping your life low stress, which, I mean, that's easier said than done, right? I mean, I've been through some pretty stressful periods, but, you got to come up with ways to mitigate the stress of life. I mean, just opening up Instagram can be stressful for people, really. I mean, so you have to empower yourself and decide this is something that's stressing me out. I'm not going to do that anymore, or come up with different ways. And for me, I just started meditating. That was like in the middle of my day, and it's amazing, like how you're just like, oh wow, I didn't even realize I was stressed out.
So how does someone start meditating?
Wait, I want to back up first because you were asking me about biological tests, and we're kind of like on the edge of this. So cellular senescence and measuring your senescent cells is another biological age test, right? So how those zombie cells are building up, and you sort of alluded to it, right? It's like the cells replicate, and then you have these ones that aren't replicating anymore, and they're just like hanging out doing nothing. I mean, they're little zombies, like hanging on for dear life, or whatever. I mean, again, this is my own little way of thinking of this, my non-scientific way. So they're sitting around, and you have to, come up with ways to clear that out. I mean, as when you're younger, that process is happening all the time, but you need to kind of do a senolytic detox, I suppose, every so often, which is fasting. That's one of the greatest ways to do that. I think it's by day 3 of a, what do you call those? Because you don't have to fast with with no food anymore. I think Walter Longo's proved that. You can do the fasting mimicking diet. And by day 3, I think you're, detoxing your senescent cells. So that's amazing. And then there's also senolytics out there. Novos has got some great, supplements or compounds in there that help detox those zombie cells as well. So that's another way. There's just a multitude of ways to measure your biological age. So, and different companies have different proprietary algorithms that are looking at different aspects of aging and then kind of coming with an algorithm to say, okay, this is your biological age. So it's really different from different companies, but.
Right. So you've touched on methylation as being the one that the Rejuvenation Olympics uses that has been the one that you have used. Can you talk about why you think that, or why it seems to be more standard that people are doing that DNA methylation as opposed to other age testing for biological age testing?
Again, this is from what I understand, but that Dunedin pace of aging is just one of the most reliable. So like on a daily basis, if I were to take a blood test, on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I more than likely would get the exact same result. Whereas some of the other ones that are using different blood biomarkers that could kind of be a little bit different on every morning or at night, or, you might get a different age. And so I think what I understand in that space is that this is one of the most reliable ways to look at it. The way I've made peace with like knowing that there's, a whole multitude of tests out there, what I care about is I'm going to take this one test and then I'm going to meditate, I'm going to make sure I meditate every day for a year or whatever. And then I'm going to take that test again. Did it make a difference? That's what I care about, is the difference. So like, for instance, I did my first pace of aging test before trying Novos. So I did a 0, and then at 6 months, and it was like, whoa, that made an 8% difference in my pace of aging. And then I added, a pound of vegetables a day, and the exercise and the weights and the saunas and the cold showers. And, I was meditating all along, but, and that made another 3% difference. So it's likewise, like I could go on vacation and not sleep very well and come back, take it again, and it might slow down my pace or increase my pace of aging. So when you take it, you do have to be a little careful.
Okay, so that's great. You keep mentioning meditation, and I recall about 20 years ago, I was just stressed out workaholic, and people would tell me I needed to meditate all the time, and I'd be like, I don't have time for that.
One more thing I got to do.
I get a massage, I work out. So what is the simplest way for someone to start meditating?
Okay, so I love, this is something that was taught to my son when he was going through a really tough time. And I thought this was brilliant. It was just on the way out the door, focus on the feeling of your feet in your shoes. When you're walking, like Thich Nhat Hanh has a really wonderful book for people that do not have time to meditate but want to meditate. It's called Peace is Every Step. When you're washing the dishes, wash the dishes. When you're making your bed, make your bed. And I try to like touch on this in my YouTube videos. Like, you got to chop a lot of carrots. Like, then chop the carrots. Like, be with them. Like, oh, this color's beautiful. When I make the bed, like I literally have focus on like, wow, I love how this fabric feels on my hands. And like, I want to, you just take that time. You've got to do it anyway. Why do you need to be thinking of like 500 things? You need to be on that step. And so you just try to live your life the way you would imagine, I suppose, you'd live as a monk in a monastery. I mean, I don't know what they live like, but that's what I would imagine. Like when I'm making the tea, I'm going to make the tea. And I think that that's the easiest way for people that are really, really busy. Because think about it, like, let's say you are like a surgeon, right? I mean, when you're in that surgery, be in that surgery. Don't be thinking about like the 5,000 things that you've got going, which you invariably do, like most people have 5,000 things going, but when you're with your kids, be with your kids,
Right. When I'm with you having this conversation, don't think about the next question.
Yes.
Think about what you're saying, because that will naturally direct where it organically wants to go as opposed to where I think it should go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's something that's so tangible for everyone. And the fact that it actually makes a difference in biological age, because, we live in this world, whether it's skincare or whether it's the longevity biohacker space, where people want the crazy stuff. They want to pull out the newest skincare trend and put slugs on their face or whatever they want, and they want to get their blood drawn or their child's blood drawn and inject it into themselves. And what you're saying is that we don't need to do that to make a huge difference at all.
Like one of my favorite doctors, Dr. Darshan Shah, he always talks about this Pareto principle. And I think it's the most brilliant thing. What is that 20% that you need to do that's going to get you 80% of the way? And the 20% is like diet, exercise, meditation. Like those are all free. That is all free. And that's going to give you 80%. I'm not, I would never argue that like maybe plasma exchange and all these other things wouldn't help. But that's like the last 20%. And same thing, like there's a Apex Medical talks about, like you got to come up with a foundation, right? And that foundation is your diet and exercise, and get that right, because that will actually help your hormones. And then once you get, then you kind of like, oh, what hasn't worked with your hormones? You got to optimize your hormones. And then it's like, you got to optimize your weight. And then that last little bit, which really in that kind of model is like the last 10%, is all the other very expensive therapies. The rest of it is like, we can all do this. It's free. It's totally free. And I just wonder, like, we talk about the pace of aging, but I wonder if like we all did that, then would all our paces of age, like where would one be? Does that, for instance, so the pace of aging is based on a study of 1,000 people.
Okay, take a step back. So pace of aging versus biological age.
Yeah.
Can you define those two?
Yeah. Okay. So so biological age, like say you've lived your life like really, really well, right? Like you've been really, really healthy. You are going to have probably a low biological age, but now we're going to look at like now you start getting really stressed out and like life goes to hell in a handbasket and you're eating pizza every night and you're not exercising and you're whatever. You're still going to have like a lower biological age because you had all those years of doing well, right? But your pace of aging might increase because now you're doing, like, say you start picking up smoking. Well, now your pace of aging is going to change for sure. Or same thing, like as you get older, your pace of aging kind of, like when you kind of start going downhill, you kind of start.
So the biological age is more cumulative over your lifespan,
Yes.
whereas the pace of aging is a more, not volatile, but it changes more quickly depending on what's currently going on.
Yes, but what you're doing more so than,
Yeah, more than your genetics.
I mean, like, okay, let's even use Brian Johnson, right? He talked about his previous, practices or how he was living his life, right? Like running Venmo and like pizza and, it was a very unhealthy lifestyle and he had a very high pace of aging. Then he started doing all the things that he's doing and he's slowly slowing down that pace of aging. So, I mean, he's doing all the stuff, nothing wrong there. But for the people listening to this podcast that don't have $2 million, I'm telling you, diet, exercise, those are all free and they move the needle 80% of the way.
Okay, so, I mean, I beat myself up a little bit just from a skin perspective and now almost from a health optimization perspective. And we've talked about this because I grew up in an urban desert in New York, very poor. I didn't really have any vegetables until I was like 25. I think in college my diet was alcohol and Fiber One cereal and apples. And
mine was canned spinach and milk. That was my college diet. Yeah,
and I never wore sunscreen until I was 30. And I think, oh my gosh, is it too late? So I probably started to have a better diet once I turned 35-ish. But just say someone's listening to this and they're 40, 45, and they're thinking, oh, it's too late for me.
No.
Is it ever too late?
No, never, because you can really turn things around, like really profoundly turn things around.
Explain. Like, what are 5 things somebody can do starting in the next, because we don't want you all to start things like all at once. That's too much.
I was just going to say, yeah, that's too much. That's the number one thing is to like not do all the things, almost like, I think it's helpful to come up with like one plan, I suppose. Like, okay, like I have a few metrics that I try to make work every day. I do a pound of vegetables and make sure half of those are greens.
I'm doing that.
Yeah, well, I'm doing that. So, and easily, and I'm going to get you into that. But anyway. And my new thing is I'm going to start adding, trying to eat a beet every day, which we'll see. I'm working on some recipes. But anyway, because they're really good for your DNA methylation.
I eat a lot of beets.
Yes, so that's good. That's very, very good for you. But so, there's diet. And so that's a few metrics making sure you get adequate protein amounts and that
What's that?
Well, for the number that seems to be floating out there, again, not a doctor, not a researcher, but what I've heard, it seems like is one gram of protein for every pound of body weight. Some people say it's per pound of lean mass. So there's some discrepancy there. But so for me, that's like between 100 and 130 grams of protein. And so what I do is I just thought, well, I'll just count the protein foods, and I don't count all the protein that's in veggies and all the other stuff, because I'm like, well, they'll just go along for the ride, you know, and I'll end up with like 130 probably. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, so I just make sure I get that, and then I make sure I have the pound of vegetables a day, and like I said, half of those are greens. So, you know, like I'm not counting potatoes as a vegetable, any, you know, starchy veggies I'm not counting as a veggie. But like the greens, I don't mind like beets, even though they're a root vegetable, turnips, those kind of things. I just don't count like starchy stuff. And I don't say plants either. I say vegetables, because like, you know, rice and grains are plants too, but that's just different. So, so those are the two like diet metrics that I make sure happen. And of course I'm, you know, optimizing how much I'm drinking water. You know, I'm also try to make sure it's organic and all of those good things. And then I just try to make sure I've got a VO2 max in there, because again, that's another way to measure aging is your VO2 max. It's a predictor of your age. So I'm doing that once a week. I'm doing a HIIT exercise once a week. I'm doing strength training, which is always changing all the time. And saunas are really good. But like if people have access to it, if they don't, they don't. That's like, again, that's kind of just getting that diet and exercise piece is going to get you a long way. It just takes a while though. You can't do all the things at once. I mean, I've been doing this for, over 25 years. You know, so it's taken like one little, I love this like analogy because I'm very into cathedrals. Anybody who's been to Europe with me will know that's all I do is like sit in cathedrals, and I just like, I love them. But I love thinking of my life like a cathedral that I'm building, you know, like it's one brick. I just have to do this one brick. And so like the pound of vegetables, I was like, Dr. Sarah Gottfried talks about that. And I was like, okay, yeah, I think I could do that. Like, I could do that. Let me see if I could do that, you know? And I didn't just eat a pound of vegetables a day, because, like, that is, like, gas. It is really mean to your body. So I was like, oh, I'll just start with, like, a carrot and some greens, you know? And then it was like, okay, then, like, next week I might add a little bit more. But, you know, I just slowly built it over time so that it became so habitual. I use the term, like, I use this analogy a lot, but, like, brushing your teeth. Like, you have to brush your teeth twice a day. And yes, okay, it's only 2 minutes each time, but it doesn't occupy any mental space, like whatsoever. You just know you're going to go, I mean, I hope. If you're not brushing your teeth, brush your teeth, because oral health is really important. But anyway, so, you know, you brush your teeth twice a day. Same thing, like when you first start a habit, it takes a lot of mental space. Like, oh, I got to get to the store. I got to make sure I have the veggies. I got to have them on hand. I got to prep them. I got to da-da-da-da, you know, all of those things. But then it just becomes like second nature, and you're just doing it, and it doesn't occupy any mental space. So, but only if you build it slowly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were talking about this earlier about even toothbrushing, because little kids, it does occupy mental space because they have to learn. Yeah. So whatever stage we're in, we will have to use some mental space until it becomes habitual. And now it just becomes habitual. Like beet kvass. You got me into beet kvass. I am not great in the kitchen. And now I love making beet kvass. And it takes 15, 20 minutes once every couple of weeks. And it gives me so much nutrients and fermented. I'm really into fermented foods. What do you think about fermented foods?
Yeah, I think they're really important. I mean, again, I'm not a scientist, but from what I hear and from what I experiment with and feel, I mean, this is really kind of when I started eating more fermented foods, again, went slowly. I started with like a tablespoon at each meal of fermented foods, but it just helped. Like I could almost feel my food getting digested. And I feel like my tummy stays, I mean, for all the girls out there, it's like my tummy stays a little flatter, you know, just all of those things like feel like they're working better. But the way I understand it is like, we're not just what we eat, we're what our microbiome eats, because that microbiome is actually making vitamins for us. And I just think that is the most freaking cool thing in the whole wide world that we in our house, we call them happy bugs. You know, I used to raise my son saying like, you know, well, what kind of happy bugs is that going to, you know, is that going to be good for your happy bugs? Is that going to be bad for your happy bugs? And like, you know, so it was always like kind of a fun conversation to have with kids, because you're like, you have bugs inside of you, you know,
a lot of them.
Yeah, a lot of bugs. And so that's really kind of fun, you know, but
yeah. You know, it's so interesting because the more we're learning with skin and the microbiome, the more we're realizing how many conditions are associated with the gut microbiome.
And eczema one of them? Isn't that one of the?
Psoriasis and rosacea are particularly linked, but eczema, you know, there's some controversy. There's more correlation than causation. But we're really finding that there's a lot of relationship. And when we're in embryo, our skin and our gut come from the same cell type. So it makes complete sense. And our brain as well. So they're all interrelated. And Western medicine wants to divide the body, but we're really all interconnected. So if your biological age is younger, your skin is going to naturally look younger. Like, no one would ever think you looked 56. That's the most absurd.
I get a few comments online. She definitely looks 56. And I mean, listen, let me just like back up, because I was a swimmer and I'm a beach baby, and to this day, I didn't wear sunscreen on the way down here. I mean, I don't wear sunscreen. I don't do it. I know you guys say to wear it, and like I'm going to Hawaii next week, I will wear the sunscreen, but for the most part, growing up, and most of my life until maybe the last 5 years, I don't wear sunscreen. I've never worn it. And so I feel like my skin is looking pretty good given my lifestyle of being out in the sun and being at the beach and being a swimmer.
So I think that you could probably get me to eat more vegetables, and I can get
Yes.
you to take better care of your skin.
Yes, for sure.
So we know our biological age is our body as a whole, but what about different organs to that point? Do different organs age differently? Like, does your brain age differently than your kidneys and your skin?
Yeah, this is what they're talking about now, and there's a way to measure that, which I think is fabulous. Again, science, I do not understand, but the fact that these omics age and symphony age, and looking at...
What are the names of them?
One is omics and one is a symphony age, and this is all through True Diagnostic, no affiliation, Yeah. Well, at any rate, I think it's so fascinating. And the way I heard it explained was like, of course our organs age at different rates. And of course we are all aging at different rates. Otherwise, we would all develop the same disease in the same organ at the same time of life. And that's not true. I mean, just looking at my parents, it's like my mom has Parkinson's, my dad has a little bit of dementia, it's like, but they're maybe within 5 years of each other, so I just think that's fascinating. Like, that basically is saying, like, I suppose those are most brain things, but at any rate, like, your kidneys could age differently, your skin could age, it's an organ, right? It can age very differently than, say, your heart, your muscular system, I suppose. Like, if you were like an elite athlete, that might, stay strong for a very long time, but maybe you had a lot of inflammation, different things are going to age differently, which I just think is fascinating.
That's super fascinating.
But here's what's empowering about it. This is the most important thing, is if you can afford that test and like look at that, it's like now you have a window into, oh my gosh, my lungs are aging really fast. Oh, what do I need to do to really support my lungs? And looking at that, because they're all tied together, just like you said, it's like, although we're looking at different systems or different, individual organs, of course they all work together. And if one starts suffering, like, others are going to start suffering. I mean, if you start like not being able to breathe, I think we would agree a lot of stuff is going to go, wrong. So it's empowering though, because you can get a window into what's happening long before you're having problems. And I think that's what's really, really cool.
Okay, and the current test that people are utilizing is the True Diagnostic test. And these things change all the time.
They change all the time.
But that's measuring your actual organ age. And it's almost like the weakest link in a chain. If your kidneys are the weakest, it's going to bring other things down. If your brain is the weakest, it's going to bring other things down. So if you get a clue that one organ system is aging more rapidly than the others, you can get a jump on it before you have any symptoms.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
I haven't, full disclosure, I'm not taken it yet. I've just been like looking at it and interested in it. It's, it's out of my budget. I mean, I'm just like everybody else that's out of my budget. It's not something that I can afford right now, but it is something that, like, in the very near future, I want to be doing. Yeah.
And I always think about, why do we do a test? The only reason I want to do a test if it's going to change a behavior of mine, right?
Yes.
So it looks like, with diet, you're basically saying eat nutritionally dense whole foods. Can I do microgreens? Do I have to weigh microgreens, or do microgreens count as more vegetables?
I honestly don't know. I honestly don't, because I know that I've heard about that, like broccoli sprouts, for instance, that the amount of sulforaphane in a broccoli sprout can be as much as like in the whole head or something. Again, I'm not a scientist. I don't know, but that's really cool if that's true.
That's what I
just
believe.
love veggies. I just love, again, back to meditation. Like, I love going, if I can go to the farmer's market, I love to go there. If I can get to the grocery store, just all the colors. Like, it's just, it's like a radish. It's so beautiful. That red, like a red beet, you cut it open and all that. Like, that is absolute like it's gorgeous. And
No, it is. And also, I mean, to your point about having a pound of vegetables, the fiber also helps move things through your body for phase 3 detoxification, which a lot of women have a hard time going to the bathroom and they get constipated and they have problems with estrogen and having the bad estrogen recycle through the body. So there's a lot of reasons. It's not just about the vegetables, it's about the whole food and what it does for our body.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's really interesting, right? Like we all take like, you know, I take supplements too, but like, you know, to take like, let's say, oh, I'm going to take vitamin C versus like getting vitamin C in a veggie that has all these other things that are going to work synergistically. That's like really cool to me. Like I think there's so much we don't know about eating veggies or plants. I mean, think about it. Like I just try to think like, okay, let's say like all bets are off. Like now all of a sudden we're wandering around in the wilderness right now. Like, you know, just trying to, and I have survival training in the wilderness, and I have college credit for this, by the way. Thank you, Mom and Dad. And we had to like forage off the land the last day. And like, that's what you're doing. You know, you're just eating plants. You're just like, oh yeah, okay, I know this is, I mean, we had to be taught which ones were safe that whole trip. But like, we were just eating plants. And I just think like, no duh. Like we had to have evolved to like with plants somehow. Like again, that microbiome, because it's kind of like, who's running the show? Like, I know when I was really a big sugar eater, I always felt like I had an addiction to sugar. And once I did a lot of the fasting, you know, I did the fasting mimicking diets and stuff, it really shifted my microbiome. And I don't like forage for sugar anymore. And I just wonder if like our body eats something and knows like, oh my God, this is really good. Cause I really do. Like I need my greens. Like I love my greens and I need them and I crave them. And when I'm traveling, it can become a problem.
You know, I agree with you. I do think our microbiome gives us cravings for different things. I do want to say that if I ever go on Naked and Afraid, I'm going to be on there with you.
I'm not doing it. There's no way.
But yeah, I do think our microbiome craves that. So I find that like if I'm in that sugar addiction, because it lights up areas of the brain on functional MRI, same as like heroin. So it's very addictive. And a lot of people listening might be like, I can't give up my sugar. So can you talk about how you would recommend going through a sugar detox until you get reset? Because it's really true that once you reset your palate, things like celery can actually taste sweet and salty.
Hazelnuts.
You just have to get through it. So how does someone go through incorporating good while slowly removing the bad and, you know, without going through that horrible feeling of flu and misery and crankiness?
It is awful, isn't it? I don't, you know, I mean, you're talking to somebody who it took over a decade for me to get off sugar. I mean, really. And I think it was like the final nail in the I would do like the fasting mimicking diets. Like that was very helpful to me. But it was really when I said, hey, I'm going to eat a pound of vegetables a day. And like, it's so filling when you focus on what you're going to do and what you're, you know, you just kind of leave behind. Like I don't focus on like how many carbs, I don't count carbs, I don't do any of that because I'm so full off the protein in the vegetables that I just don't really, it's like if I crave anything, like say I'm craving a little sweet, I'll have literally like one chocolate chip in it. And which sounds so stupid to people that are on sugar right now, because I know how dumb that would have sounded to me. But I would say one of the greatest things I found very helpful was berries. Like when I would have a craving for sugar, like say it was ice cream, I would freeze up a bunch of berries, or I would get the frozen berries at Costco. And that for some reason was, you know, so you have to kind of like look at what your cravings are and try to find something healthier, and just know there is going to be some time where you're going to have to kind of find your inner general. You know, I call it your inner general, you know, you are worthless and weak, you know, or whatever, like somebody's going to really boss you around. And so you're not going to do that. But it's a lot easier to do that when you're super full off of veggie. I mean, like I come down for dinner and I'm almost force feeding myself every night because I'm like, okay, I know I need, 4 more ounces of greens and 20 more grams of protein. Okay. And usually I'm just going to have a liquid because I'm just so full by then.
Yeah. Similar with me, when I was in college, and it was the low fat, high carb rage, and I was always hungry. I was always having a hard time managing my weight. And now I'm protein centered. I look at eating real foods, and everything sort of falls into place if you just focus on those two things, eating real foods and protein centered. and
And
maybe
healthy
a pound
fats.
of vegetables.
I was gonna say, and healthy fats.
And I don't hesitate to drivel like olive oil and avocado all over my stuff, and my weight tends to be okay, as opposed to if I was having more processed foods, I tend to get really hungry, and I know it's sugar spikes, insulin, and then sugar downs, and up and down and up and down. So I think diet really plays a huge role, because we're looking at it as messengers. Like, what are the messengers? What are the messages we're sending to ourselves? Mm-hmm. Are we sending good messages to turn the genes on or turn the genes off? And once you start looking at food as a message, it's a lot different than if you're just filling your tongue with satisfying.
Yeah, food is information and food is medicine. I mean, those two things are just like, duh. Like, I mean, it's not no duh, but when you start eating like that, you're like, oh my gosh. And then same thing, like, is the microbiome the messenger? Like, is the microbiome like making you forage for those things? So I want people to walk away from this not thinking, oh, well, great, they're so perfect. I want them to, like, I struggled with all of this for decades. I mean, decades. And especially the sugar at night. Like, I would be so good all day, and then it would be like, oh, I just need a little bit of ice cream, mm-hmm. And then it was like, oh, well, and, it took me a long time, but you can do it. You got to do it step by step by step, and just focusing on like adding more things, and look at this. What really, really helped was like looking at this, like, oh, I have the rest of my life to do this. I'm not trying to come off sugar in 8 weeks. I'm just going to, like, this week focus on this. I'm going to add some berries at night, and I'm going to make sure I get extra veggies during the day. Okay, all right, maybe I still had a little bit of sugar, but like next week I'm going to get better, and then the next week get better, and the next, you know what I mean? Because that is also giving your microbiome that time. But I do think with sugar, the fasting mimicking diet did really help. Like, kind of almost like it didn't feel really great, but at the same time, like when I got to the other side of it, it made it a lot easier. So I don't know if that was like a microbiome thing, like dying off or something, but that did help. But I did have to put a lot of willpower in there.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that the big things that people can do and slowly incorporate over time is diet, mm-hmm. and eating real whole foods, focusing on protein and vegetables, highly colorful, good variety of vegetables.
Healthy fats.
And we know from listening to this podcast, healthy fats are important because of the bilipid membrane in the skin, and we need fats to hold in moisture and retain water to make your skin look dewy and plump.
Plus for your brain.
And the brain and the hormones. So fats are needed for brain, hormones, skin, and many, many other things. You mentioned exercise, VO2 max, weight training. Yeah. You mentioned sauna. So if someone doesn't have access to a sauna, do you think, because I look at the skin as a major detox organ, so when we sweat, we remove our heavy metals and other toxins. Yeah. What if someone's working out really hard to the point where they're sweating hard? Is that equivalent to sauna, or more heat shock proteins with sauna?
I think there's more heat shock proteins with sauna, right. I would imagine, but you're still getting that detox. And the thing is, you are detoxing, so make sure to take a shower, like right after. I see these girls that get in the sauna, like, first of all, with all the plastic clothing on and all, and I'm like, oh my God. And then they don't take a shower, and I'm like, you just reabsorbed all that. Like, but obviously.
I see that at hot yoga, and I exit as soon as we're done with Shavasana, and I exit and I go rinse my body off. There's just a sink there, and I rinse it off with the water, and not only to prevent acne from forming and folliculitis, but also to get those toxins off, because even 15 minutes driving home, they're going to get reabsorbed into the body. So as soon as you sweat, we want to get it off.
Yeah, but if people can't afford a sauna, I would encourage them to look into local gyms. Again, no affiliation, but shout out to EOS. Like, they've made gym membership so affordable, and they usually always have saunas. So there might be a gym in your neighborhood that you could use, and they would have a sauna. So it's like a win-win. You got to go to the, it's like a way to motivate yourself to work out. Like, that was how I got into working out. I was like, well, I'm just going to go for the sauna and have like a spa day. And then I was like, well, I might as well lift some weights. It's like, it builds.
And then most of my friends are from the gym. So for me, the gym is a huge sense of community, which I think we underestimate in the longevity space. It's just the community.
No, I'm not. When I'm in the gym, I'm in my zone. So that's not my community.
I'll find you and I'll hunt you down and make you be my friend.
I'm in with the early. There's like different crowds at different times of day. You go later. I'm at the like 4 or 5 in the morning, and we're all in our zones. We're doing our thing. We get in, we get out. Yeah.
I still found you and made you be my friend.
I know. You didn't make me.
I know. Okay, meditation, that's attainable for everyone, even just being in flow in the moment. And then fasting.
Fasting, yeah. And I would encourage fasting mimicking. Don't do the whole, because I just think it's so much easier. And so people can just Google fasting mimicking diet. There's, Walter Longo has the kit out there, the Prolong kits, again, no affiliation, but just, or you can put in some plan to your AI.
I think it tastes disgusting.
I know. So you can.
I do not like the fasting mimicking diet. I gave it to Julie.
No, you're talking about the Prolong, because you can design a fasting mimicking diet. Yeah, you can design your own.
Yeah, I'll do my own fasting mimicking one of these days. Okay, and then the last thing I wanted to touch on are supplements that can be utilized for or reducing your biological age.
Yeah, so I'm a big, obviously most people know I'm a big fan of Novos. Again, yes, I have an affiliate code, but no, this is just a fact. I started taking Novos, and my life was pretty, it was tough. I had a teenager, whatever. But literally everything went to hell in a handbasket for the first 6 months. And I knew that I was part of their study, and I'm one of those people oh gosh, I want to do good for them. So I made sure to take it every day. But when they called me to take my, okay, 6 months is up, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I've just had literally the most stressful 6 months of my entire life. And I thought, this isn't going to be good. And it came back 8% slower. So I know that supplement works, and it's all about clearing out the senescent cells. There's all kinds of other things, again, science that is way above my pay grade, so people can look that up, but it's a great. So I don't think you can achieve super great results with no supplements, but I do not think you need to be taking 100 pills at every meal. I just think there are so many wonderful compounds out there and companies doing combination supplements, and they're making them into drinks, and you have to do your research. But when you look into Senolytics, that was how I found that company. They had Fisetin or Fisetin, I don't know how you say it. I'm never going to figure that out. But anyway, which is a really powerful senolytic. And
found in strawberries.
Yes, found in strawberries, but you'd have to eat a lot of strawberries to get what you need for clearing out, So, and then a bunch of other things in there. Glycine is in there, and in fact, as a skin person, that was the thing that I noticed. I was my skin just I was it just really popped my skin, which was really cool, especially when I was really stressed out.
Yeah. Well, that's why I appreciate having this conversation so much, because I think it's so easy for someone to be listening and be like, that's not my life. My life isn't perfect. I can't just live to do all of these hacks. But what you're talking about is something that is part of everyone's life. We can all find time to be present in the moment. We can all find time to sweat a little bit with and without our families and our friends. We could all find time and money to not eat for 24 to 48 hours. Yeah. And these are accessible for everyone. Now, what if someone cannot afford to even get the true diagnostic test? Are there simple ways to measure how well you're aging, through, I think you have mentioned before to me, grip strength?
Yeah, grip strength, right?
Things?
That's a great way to measure it. Your balance, there's balance testing. There's the grip strength is, you have a thing that you grab and it tells you the force, and you can buy something like that off Amazon. I don't think it's even $20. I don't think that's very expensive. What else is the other things?
You mentioned VO2 max.
VO2 max, yeah. So VO2 max, and also your body composition. So how much, we all know sarcopenia with aging, right? So DEXA scan is going to give you how much muscle mass to bone mass. You can be looking at, that's a great test. And so I go to a place called DEXA Fit, and I think it's cost me, I don't know, maybe it was 100 for the DEXA, not even 100. And then 150 for the VO2 max. And part of the VO2 max, they give you your resting metabolic rate. So you're sitting in a chair and they're giving you the exact amount of calories you burn if you just sat around all day. So it's really empowering too. If you're trying to lose some weight, you can really dial in the exact number of calories you need to be eating on a daily basis, which is great.
Right. I just want to jump back for those of you who haven't heard the term sarcopenia. It's basically loss of muscle mass. So you could see when someone's older, they kind of get frail, they get a little hunched over, they get skinny legs. We want to avoid all that. We want to keep muscle on our body because that's a sign. Actually, your leg girth is associated with, or the thickness of your thighs is associated with longer life. So keeping muscle on your body is really essential.
or building the muscle. I mean, it's like a savings account, right? You're just going to build it up because you know it's going to decrease as you get older, even if you work out. I mean, even the best athletes, right? Their VO2 max decreases and their muscle mass decreases. But, you know, why not go from like great to good instead of good to bad?
Mm-hmm. So VO2 max, you have to go somewhere to have it tested. I've never had my VO2 max tested.
I think so. I mean, like these rings and other things are giving you a VO2 max, but it's based on an algorithm. I'm not sure that that's even like one of the True Diagnostic, one of those tests, like even through your blood is giving you a VO2 max. I don't know. I feel like why not just go right to the source and like actually test your VO2 max? Why use an algorithm when it's not that expensive? It's not a fun test, but it's good to know.
Right.
And I mean, I only do it like once a year. And yeah, I just, again, those are things that's like, okay, it's not free, but it's not breaking the bank, you know?
So we have grip strength, VO2 max, leg girth or muscle mass.
Your muscle mass.
What did we say? Getting up from a lying down position without using your hands.
Yeah, this is another great one. Yeah. Can you get up from a lying down position, right? And there's different ways to do it. There's just YouTube that like.
I'm going to do it right now.
No, because you got the slippers on. I think we both have dresses on. But yeah, can you get up? And there's different ways you can test, so like I guess you would look up mobility. I'm not exactly sure what you would YouTube. We'll have to find.
Okay, so I found one because I'm really into this. This is what I try to practice all the time, and I get my kids to do it, and I compete with them. And there's a YouTube video. If you just look up like getting up, lying down, no hands, something like that. You want to see how quickly that you can get up from a lying down position without using your hands. And I think it really tests pelvic girdle strength because you're not pushing off. Because if you see an old person, the way they have to get up off a chair, they have to use their hands. We should not have to do that. And in like Japanese culture, they sit on the floor all the time. So they're constantly getting up and down. And let's just be honest, the couches aren't good for us in that regard, because we want to be able to have good balance, to your point, and strength so we don't fall.
This is why gardening is so good. I think one of the reasons is you're getting up and down.
And eating the vegetables.
Digging, and you got the veggies. But even if you were growing flowers, like it's the getting up and down.
They still bring you happiness, though.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. Did I miss anything?
I think we got it.
Yeah. Okay, so lots of ways that we know we're aging. It used to be 9 hallmarks of aging. Now we're up to 13. And I think we're going to be even more as the science continues. And then once we know what causes aging that we know of, then we can figure out ways to take agency and control over how quickly age, to the point where I kind of wonder sometimes, like, how would I live differently if I didn't have a birth certificate and I didn't know when I was born?
Yeah. If somebody asked me, I would tell them I'm probably like 30. That's how I feel. If I'm I feel like 30, 33.
I don't think I want to be 30 again.
It's
like a lot of drama 30s. And like uncertainty.
I love my 30s. Sorry. Living on a military base, single girl. This is great. Anyway.
Many options. Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing. It's like, if anyone is listening here, I mean, we kind of get in this mindset of I'm sore, my joints hurt because of my age. Well, but they don't have to.
Yes, this was a big thing. So I watched my mom kind of was like, well, I'm just old, and she does have arthritis, and, but it was like, oh, I'm just, I just have this because I'm just old. There's a bit of a giving up in that. And I mean, I love my mom, but, I see people, not just my mom, I see other people too. There's a lack of empowerment there that I don't think needs to be there. I don't think we need to be victims to the calendar. I think that we can do all kinds of things. And each one of those things, you're talking about like there's all these different hallmarks of aging, but we have to remember they all interconnect. So impacting one affects others, so if you're going to get out and exercise, right, if you start building muscle, that's actually going to help increase your VO2 max, even if you've never done a bunch of sprinting, and then you start sprinting, they all work together. So at any rate, I just think we just can't lie down and accept like, oh, this is just what happens with age. And I am so grateful that more and more people don't feel like that. I think, what is it, like the guy who broke the 5-minute mile, then it was like, oh, well, now we can do it under 4 minutes. Oh,
Yeah.
I think
Roger Bannister.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think about, to your point, if you're eating really healthy, nutritious foods and you have enhanced blood flow, you're going to get that much more nutrient delivery to your skin and to your organs. It's going to nourish you from the inside out. So everything falls into place. And when you start feeling better, it's easier to incorporate the other things.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's just like, I don't want to be in pain. I don't want to spend a decade of my life in decline or unable to move. I mean, there's just so much I want to see and so much I want to do. And I want to be there for my son. I'm not afraid of dying by any means. Like, I was having this conversation last night with a friend. And it was just like I've had a great life. Like, if I had, peace out right now, like, I would say I had a good ride. I had a great ride. But there's still so much more I want to see. If I don't see it, okay. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm more concerned about having like 10 or more years of being alive, but not being able to experience life. That's what I'm afraid of for the most part, So it's like, I'm just going to do everything I can. I mean, everything.
Yeah. And you are. So, I love your strategy that you're not interfering or interrupting your life to actually have a more expanded life. And you are doing some cool things. So can you share with everyone before we close out here what you're doing on your YouTube channel to give people some tools and other places that they can find you?
Yeah. So I do have an Instagram, Julie Gibson Clark on Instagram, and then which I just post shenanigans and all kinds of fun things. But and then I have a YouTube channel that I started, which is the Longevity Kitchen, and it's just about like cooking and how I hope eventually I'm going to help people put together, like, here's how you put together a week, it's like, because that's a lot. Like, people are like, how do you do a pound of vegetables a day? How do you even make sure you got them in the fridge every week? Eventually we'll get to that. But we're right now just kind of laying down some basics and like teaching people like some fun recipes, or I don't really like to think of recipes because I feel like that is just, again, adds more stress. So it's like, we're going to make something and we're going to think about the structure and how we make it. So just really trying to teach people how to cook, because I feel like one of the major things we've done that's aged us is we've outsourced our food to, I don't want to call any companies out, but, we've outsourced it, and they're a business. They're going to use the lowest, the cheapest stuff. They're not everybody. There's some good restaurants out there, but, if you're just always outsourcing that, you're never going to achieve pinnacle health. Whereas if you're sitting in your kitchen, you know exactly what goes into your food. And so I think we need to be inspired to get back into our kitchen, and then we just need to get in there and start working. Yeah. Start chopping your veggies. It'll be your meditation. See, it's a win-win. Meditate and chop veggies.
Yes, you've helped me. It doesn't feel like it's added any stress to my life at all. And I'm really into it now. So, and I'm in the moment when I'm doing it, feeling all the senses of my vegetables. So thank you. Everybody check out Julie's Instagram and her Longevity Kitchen, and more goodness to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Listen to Your Skin by Moon & Skin. It's an honor to be part of your skincare journey. And if you love this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave us a glowing review, and share it with someone who's passionate about their skincare journey. And please connect with us on social to ask your questions, which will drive future educational episodes.